where we left off. So we were able to print the content or the payload of that object CL1, okay? And we've already initialized the internal pointer within CL1 to null. And we also assigned the head pointer to CL1 or to the address of CL1. So these were critical, structural, strategic lines of code that you need to have. Now, let me show you what else you can do with this. Now, remember I mentioned the list. Can we refer to the list as some sort of an entity, right? And it's of type client anyway. And so we're going to use a pointer, right? So what I'm going to do is do this right here and struct client and call it list. And the only time I'm going to use it to traverse the list. So I'm going to call it list PTR. How's that? Okay. So it's a list pointer. So it's going to point to the beginning of the list at all times, and then we can move it. So this is what I'm going to use to traverse. We're going to use this pointer to traverse the list of clients, right? So that would be the idea behind this. So let me just put an asterisk here. Okay. All right. So let's prove that we can actually do this. So instead of testing right here, what I'm going to do is create an alternate test right here where we traverse the node and so on. So when you do this, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your list PTR and assign it to the head of the list. We could do that right now, right here. So you could do a list PTR and make it equal to the actual head. So they have the same data. We're not going to move head only, we only move head only when we insert items. But list PTR, we're going to use it when we move across items. So that will be the main difference between list PTR and head. Let me just compile here to make sure that we're syntactically correct. Everything is good. And I'm going to print the same data that I had here with list PTR. Okay? So I'm simply going to go ahead and do this. Printf. And the same thing, %s /t, give me a tab. And that would be the other payload, which is the %.2f, which is the balance, /n. And I forgot to put a quote here, all right? And I want, this time, you need to dereference list PTR, right? So, and how do you do that? Well, you're going to do something like this. List PTR, just like we've learned before, you can dereference with the arrow, like this, to name, comma, list PTR to balance. Now let's see if we get the same data. So this will be critical. If we get the same data, we're in good shape, right? So compile and run. And let's put Kelly here and a balance of $20. And sure enough, so we're in really, really, really good shape. Except I didn't put the $sign there. We can fix that. So now, let me put a $sign here. We can get rid of this test line here. Since this line will be meaningful to us every time we want to print the content of the list, right? So all we need to do after that is increment the pointer list PTR to the next one. But first, let's start inserting items. So create a next node, right? So how do you create a next node? CL2 and then put some data in there, right? So struct client, so totally independent object, CL2, okay? And then you can ask the user to go ahead and put data in it, right? So we can go ahead and populate the payload for that one. So we can copy this code here. And all you have to do is change it to CL2. So let's do that here. Okay. And this here will be CL2.name, CL2.balance. However, we're going to have to link the nodes now. And how are we going to do that? Well, first, how about the internal data member? Right? Remember, head was pointing to the first element, CL1. Aha. So can I do this? CL2 dot next equal head. Right? So what it's doing is now they're both pointing at the same address, at head, which really is pointing at CL1. Okay? Good. But now you can move head to point to the beginning of CL2. So now you go ahead and say head equals the address of CL2. Okay? Well, let's prove that at this stage that the head has shifted and that we're going to end up printing in this line here the second element we entered, right? So, and you're going to say, okay, where's the other one? Did it get lost? Well, we're going to see that that's not the case. We can still access it. So let's say Joe is the first element we put in. And we put a balance of 67.78, right? And then we enter the next node, and that would be Kelly. And let's say she has $1.25. And notice what happens now. It prints Kelly. So it went straight to the head. Now, what if you wanted to print Joe as well? That's not a problem. To traverse at this stage, we're going to need to move the pointer to the next item, right? So list PTR is going to be equal to whatever it was pointing at right now, list PTR next. Right? So that's how you make it move to the next item. Now let's go ahead and copy and paste the code here, and you can see this eventually will be repetitive, and it could be put in a loop. So let's do that here. And let's see how this behaves. So let's copy and run, I'm sorry. Okay. And let's go ahead and do Joe as our first element. It's got $20. And then Jane, and it's got 100. Let's see what happens. And sure enough, now we get our result. So the next video, we're going to add another item and see how this behaves for us.